call this meeting to order, and I'm going to read this statement earlier. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 1 to 5 on today's agenda. For the item just mentioned, only those who make oral submission today or written submission before the amendment or adopted may appeal to the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to a local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comment on these amendments. Declaration of interest. I would like to declare declaration of interest myself. I, Councillor Eli Al-Shantiri, declare a potential direct procurement interest on item 5, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, Agenda 9, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 2019, Flood Relief Provisions, as I own a property in the area affected by the May 2017 flooding event. So we're going to go through our consent agenda, and we'll hold the item, and we do have a presentation on the item number 5 we just talked about, just a short presentation. Declaration of interest. Any other than myself now? Confirmation of minute 8, meeting October 3rd, 2019. Carried. Thank you. Item number 1, Plan and Infrastructure and Economic Development Department, Plan Service, Zoning Bylaw 5651 First Line Road, and I think we have technical amendment from Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. Is this on? Yep. Thanks. So whereas reports ACS 2019 PIE PS 01109 recommends approval of an amendment to the zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 5651 First Line Road to permit a residential plan of subdivision, and whereas area F as shown on document 1 and referred to in document 4 should read as V3A with exception 871 to V3A exception 871 SXXX. And whereas the zoning details proposed in document 4 are to amend the existing exceptions by adding new provisions or to replace existing provisions of the same nature, not to delete the existing exceptions in their entirety. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend that the text V1C 871R to V1C 871R SXXX in documents 1 and 4 be replaced with the text V3A 871R to V3A 871R SXXX. 2, that document 4, the text delete and add a new exception to be replaced with amend exception, and the text 4 add a new exception to be replaced with the text 4 add a new provision. 2 and 3, that no further notice be provided pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act.
I think you had one extra. So
I might have. I think
we'll let you get away
in
with
the
it.
one.
So the item
that,
1,
yeah.
The Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 5651 First Line Road to permit a residential plan of subdivision as detailed in document 1 and 3. And item 2, the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee approved the consultation details section of this report. We do have 2 speakers, but I believe the 2 speakers in favor of this item. Am I correct? I see some nodded. So for our committee member on the item, carry as with the amendment from Councillor Moffat. Carry as amended. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for coming. Item number 2, zoning bylaw amendment, part of 5788 Prince of Wales Drive. Item number 1, the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zone bylaw 2008-250 for part of 5788 Prince of Wales Drive for the purpose of rezoning the land from agriculture subzone 3 AG3 to agriculture subzone 8 AG8 to prohibit residential uses on a retaining farmland as detailed in document 2. And again, Item number 2 is the Agricultural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report be included as part of the brief explanation. So on the item, I don't believe we have any speaker for item 2. So item number 3 is zoning bylaw amendment, part of 170 Rapid Path in West Carlton. The item number 1, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for part of 170 Rabbit Path for the purpose of rezoning the land from agriculture subzone 2 AG2 to agriculture subzone 8 rural exemption AG8 to prohibit the residential uses on the retaining farmland as detailed in document 2. Item number 2, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approved the consultation detail section of this report to be included as part of the brief explanation. On the item, carry. Thank you. Item number 4, Economic Development and Long-Range Planning, City of Ottawa Zoning Bylaw 2008-250, Ombudsman Amendment, Q4 2019. Item number 1, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 as shown in document 1 and detail in document 2 and 4. Item number 2, that Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report to be included as a part of brief explanation. And we do have a technical amendment by the Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, we have a change to zoning details. Whereas the report recommends zoning changes for multiple properties throughout the City of Ottawa, including the lands municipally known as 2726, 2760, 2775, and 2782 Moody Drive. And whereas the zoning details specific to implementing Schedule R14 of the official plan for the lands municipally known as 2726, 2760, 2775, and 2782 Moody Drive failed to include provisions recognizing the existing uses. Therefore, be it resolved that the following changes be made to the staff report, that Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee amend the staff report with the following. That the zoning details for 2726, 2760, 2775, and 2782 Moody Drive contained within document 2, zoning details for review by Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, be amended by adding the following. Amend Schedule 240, rural exceptions, by adding a new exception, XXXR1, with provisions having the general intent as follows. Column 2, applicable zones to read RG XXXR1, column 3, additional land uses permitted to read agricultural use detached dwelling. Amend Schedule 240, rural exceptions, by adding a new exception, XXXR2, with provisions having the general intent as follows. Column 2, applicable zones to read RG XXXR2. Column 3, additional land uses permitted to read detached dwelling. Amend Schedule 240, rural exceptions, by adding a new exception, XXXR3, with provisions having the general intent as follows. Column 2, applicable zones to read RG XXXR3. Column 3, additional provisions to read minimum lot width 75 meters, minimum lot area 0.5 hectares. That document 1E be replaced with the following, and there's a map included with the motion. And be it further resolved that no further notice be provided pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act. Did I get all the X's right?
Yes, you did.
Mr. Chair.
Scott added one, you didn't, so it's good. On item 4, we do have a speaker, and that's Julie Carra from Fontaine. Julie, are you here? And would you be okay if we carry this item? Do you have to speak? Okay. Okay. So on the Vice Chair's amendment? Oh, you want, okay, go ahead.
I just want to quickly thank staff for one of the sections, the portion pertaining to Fairmount Road, Fairmount Park. That's been something that my office has been working on for quite some time, to create a actual proper park. It involved the closing of road allowance, the acquisition of 2 properties, and this rezoning, which allow which allows us to now go to the next step of actually creating a park in this space for the residents. So I just appreciate that it's in their support and we can move on. So it's good.
Good. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. So on the Vice Chair's amendment, okay, on the item, okay, as amended, thank you. That's item 4. Item 5, as we earlier, we do have a presentation from our staff, is zoning bylaw amendment 2019 floods relief provision, so we'll hold item number 5. Item number 6 is the Hobbs Municipal Drain Outlet Extension, and we do have a speaker, I believe, on the item. Mr. Bruce Krusty, are you here? Okay. Mr. Krusty, you can come down and at the public delegation, you have 5 minutes to address the committee on the item. This one? Yeah. Yeah, we'll do it now because the other one's staff, so we'll keep that. Can you press your button on, sir? And can you time it?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman, will Robinson Consulting be doing any type of an update or presentation? I was under the impression that he would have started with that.
Well, we didn't, we have our staff here, and you have, I don't think, does the committee need a presentation on this? I
No.
think the committee familiar with the item. So you have 5 minutes to address us about that item and your concern, and we have staff here. We can ask them after. So go ahead, your 5 minutes begin.
Thank you, sir. I am a landowner within the Hobbs Municipal Drain Basin. I came to the City of Ottawa asking for maintenance on the Hobbs Municipal Drain. I have never asked for drainage improvements on my land. I specifically asked that action be taken to stop the flooding of my land. There's in excess of 1,500 acres in my area that experience flooding due to the Hobbs Municipal Drain. Fortunately, we've had Robinson Consulting, Mr. Andrew Robinson, appointed to address this. He's come back and stated that there is insufficient outlet. If you read top of page 4 out of 5 of his report, in his dialogue with the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, he has determined that there is insufficient outlet. He can comment accordingly. The City of Ottawa has an obligation to provide sufficient outlet to a municipal drain. We understand the impacts. Don't believe what I say. Mr. Robinson is well respected. He has provided expert opinion evidence countless times, and the city has sloughed this off for over 30 years. It's well documented, this issue. I would like to see the committee today send the engineer's report back to the engineer and look at 2 potential alternate routes through Lot 15 North, Concession 5, to the existing Upper Flowing Creek Municipal Drain to alleviate the flooding, or southwards through Lot 15 to Fallowfield Road to alleviate the drain. If he cannot obtain a permit in either of those 2 routes, he has an obligation to provide injuring liability to those 1,500 acres that are being impacted from flooding. This is well documented. Mr. Robinson can speak to this much better than I. He's worked on a similar, I would expect several similar situations like this, but simply closing the file, we're going to find ourselves in court battling this out. Thank you.
Okay. Any question to the delegate? Go ahead.
So-
Councilor Murphy?
Mr. Krusty, as you know, the Hobbs Drain has been there for several years, and it is designed to outlet into the Richmond Fen. The challenges with extending it through the Fen, of course, are environmental, and the RVCA is not on for that, since the Richmond Fen is a naturally occurring wetland and a PSW, and it's quite important in terms of the ecosystem in the Richmond area. When did you buy your property?
Don't believe that's relevant. Councilor Moffat?
Oh,
Sir, I don't believe that's relevant to the issue at stake. It's been documented. People have been complaining for over 30 years of flooding in that area. We can
Well-
trace it back specifically to the condition of the Hobbs Municipal Drain.
Can
yeah,
you-
so I know that there's been complaining about flooding in that area, primarily at the north end of the Hobbs Drain, and its relationship with the extension of Flowing Creek, which never unfortunately happened, which would have helped Hobbs Drain, because it would have diverted a lot of the flow from Fernbank area into the Hobbs, into the Flowing Creek Municipal Drain, Flowing Creek. But unfortunately, that petition was abandoned.
Can I,
That would have helped you.
if I
We
could-
actually, this isn't a
Can you
debate,
just hold on to
unfortunately,
it?
this is
Okay.
just,
So,
but,
you have
no, I was
questions?
just curious on that, because I think
Okay.
the challenge is, there obviously is a historic issue here, but that would have been also, you would have been well
Okay.
aware of that before you purchased your property, and I don't know if all the other landowners on the Hobbs Drain watershed, and then now you're talking about bringing in another watershed, or Flowing Creek, they would all have to pay into it just for one property that has always flooded. That's a tough one.
It's not a tough issue. Back to your commentary on the diversion from Upper
it's not
Flowing
me.
Creek, Mr. Robinson came back to you in 2006 and said, fix the diversion. It went to ERAC, it went to City Council. That work was approved, but my friends in the Drainage Superintendent's Department never followed through on the
Okay,
work.
okay. So you don't need to point finger at anybody, sir, but we heard you, and now, if no other question, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Cressy. So, we do have question for staff, and, okay, you ask.
Just get a response to the concern and the status of this drain and the reasons for not moving forward from Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So the Hobbs Drain, as you said, has been in existence for a number of years. When it was first constructed, the property in question was only assessed $1. So there was no expectation that this property would have outlet back then. Mr. Crusty purchased the property just in the last few years. And we do maintain the drain as required. There has been maintenance done on the Hobbs Drain. To Councillor Moffat's point, if the Upper Flowing Creek petition had have proceeded, it probably would have helped the situation. But again, the issue here is the engineers presented several options to the Conservation Authority, and they've rejected all of those options because of the Richmond Fen.
Mr. Ryan, can you, on page 6, document 1, can you explain, just, so that mean, is what I see in the map, is that mean you're gonna, if we go with the work just for the land traditionally been flooded, you have to assess all the way down to, if I see it on the map, I understand correctly, I asked Councilor Moff to explain it here, he knows the area more than we do, on document 1, the location plan.
Yep. So currently, Councillor, the work, if we do any work on the drain, we can only assess from that point upward,
Okay.
upstream.
Yes.
If the drain was to be extended downwards, then those properties would be assessed, and they should, for future maintenance and for construction, as would the benefiting upstream properties.
And that's a large area, if I can see it from here. So,
Yeah, it's a big watershed.
okay. Any other question? Okay, Vice Chair, Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, question for staff again. I understand within the Drainage Act that in this case, the recommendation from the engineer coming back to us includes that the city would be paying the $80,000 or $85,000 of the work. How often does something like that happen? My understanding is usually any engineering report and subsequent work is covered by the landowner. So in this case, this is coming back to the city in its entirety. So I've never seen that before, and I'm curious about the context behind that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so I agree, this is the first in my 20 years that we've used Section 40 of the Drainage Act, and it's the engineer's determination as to who pays in this particular case. And I don't believe, I don't want to speak for Andy Robinson, but I don't believe in his 40 or 50 years of doing this that he's ever used Section 40 either. It was always our understanding with different pieces of provincial legislation, and we've had committees at the province where the Conservation Authority and MNR and the Drain and OMAF have been at the table, that the answer is not supposed to be no, there should always be a compromise solution. Numerous solutions were proposed to the RVCA, and they said no. So I expect this will be appealed at some level, and there may be an opportunity to recover some of the costs through that process. So I don't think that we're at the end of the process at this point. But this is the first time that I've seen a Section 40 report, and it's the first time I believe, if Andy, I don't want to speak for Andy again, but I think that he's used Section 40 as well. We've never had this situation before.
We've previously, in this term of council, approved at least one, if not two, engineering studies, but I don't think we've ever had a discussion around the potential risk back to the city that, the engineer could refer the cost back to us. But what you're saying is it's a rare occurrence, so it's not something that you'd be normally advising this committee about that financial risk?
Typically not. I think in the future, though, moving forward, that when there is a significant environmental feature such as a wetland involved, we may have to either elaborate on the financial implications, potential implications, or maybe not even appoint the engineer and let the landowners appeal to the, whatever bodies they see fit.
Okay, I think that's helpful and something for
Yeah.
our committee to keep in mind too for future projects, certainly that affect environmental areas. Thank you.
Good question, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you. I will read the item, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that council consider the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultant, Inc., entitled Hobbs Municipal Drain Outlet Extension Works Cannot Be Constructed, Section 40, engineer's report dated August 2019, and instruct the drainage engineer to determine any further work on the proposed drainage works in accordance with the Section 40 of the Drainage Act, Ontario. On the item? Carry. Thank you. I do have, we don't have in camera item, but I do have a motion. I would like to introduce it, but first of all, we need to have exemptions of the, sorry, before the exemption of it, so this is not a notice of motion. We're hoping to deal. Where's Andrea? No. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's, so this is a motion, but I don't want. Sorry. So this, I'm going to transfer the chair to the vice chair. So, Mr. Vice Chair, I would like to, whereas it is appropriate to consider this motion in timely manner, there is as an actionable complaint on both of the property discussed below. Therefore, be it resolved that the rules procedure be suspended to permit the consideration of this following motion.
Is the motion carried?
Thank you. Thank you,
Carried.
Mr. Vice Chair. So the motion moved by myself, and let me read it for you because the whereas is really explaining what we're trying to do here. Whereas the permanent signage and private property bylaw 2016-326 allow home-based businesses to have one ground sign that 0.2 square meter in area, 1.5 meter in height, and set back at least 1 meter from the front of the property line, provided the building contains the use is set back at least 18 meters from the front of the property line, section 116. Whereas there are two home-based businesses in Ward 5 which have had signs on their front lawn for many years, which are not compliant with the bylaw. And whereas the ward councillor feel that these signs are in character with the rural streetscape of which they are found, an additional provided a means by which to advertise their businesses, thereby increasing rural economic growth. And whereas rural signage for home-based business will be a part of the 2020 permanent sign on private property bylaw review. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee recommend that council grant following exemption from the permanent sign on a private property by law 2016-326. Item number 1, trim and proper 3570 Dunrobin Road in Woodlawn, KOA 3MO, shall be permitted to have a sign that is 3 square meter and nearly 2.4 meter in height in the current location on a property. Item number 2, Ellie's Fencing Solutions, 3638 Dunrobin Road, Woodlawn, KOA 3MO, shall be permitted to have a sign that 1.824 square meter in area, 2.4 meter in height, and located 1 meter from the front of the property line. Be it further resolved that sign permits are still required for each site. It will be responsibility of the business owner to secure the permit. So, folks, this is part of, we will be reviewing the sign bylaw because the last time we established that was in 2016, and some of those signs been permanently there before that time, and those two of the businesses we have on Dunrobin Road where the speed limit is 80, and when people drive almost 100, and you can, impossible to see a sign if it's, if the original requirement be adopted. So we're asking the committee, and I'll be asking council to support the exemption. They still have to come to the city for a permit, but the reason they didn't apply for permit before, because the size of the sign was not suitable for that area, and they would have been in business much longer than 2016. So I'm asking for your support on this motion, and we can send it to council, and we will be working with staff from the building code about the future review of the sign and bylaw because at the time when we allow home-based business, we thought the small sign will be sufficient, but we didn't think about some of them is going to be located on a highway where it's going to be difficult to see the sign. So,
I have a question.
okay.
Right. Counselor DeRusse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eli, I hope this is not your permanent business. You're going into fencing business? I hope not. But my comment is, we do run to these issues in a rural area, and I'm happy to see that it's going to the 2020 that we're going to have the sign bylaw review, because we just did that one not too long ago, and I totally agree with you. It is not sufficient, specifically for people who live on highway, specifically people who live on Highway 31 and in Dunrobin. I'm glad to see you doing that, but we want to make sure we need an assurance that staff are really following up on that in our review for 2020 to making sure that we have a proper implementation. We don't need to come back to this committee every time someone put a sign, and every entrepreneur or business people in our community, as you know, rural areas full of home businesses. We need to be able to promote and ensure those businesses are getting enough support from us. So thank you. I just want to make sure that I support you on that one.
Yep, Counselor El Shantiri.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. First of all, to Councilor DeRusse, no, this name is Eli, and my name is Eli, so let's clear that away. And thank God I don't own any other business, because I have enough problem owning one house in a floodplain. Every time we talk about floods, I have to declare conflict of interest. But you're right, we did speak with the staff from the building permit and the one who, building codes, who the one working with us on a signed bylaw, but we don't, these two businesses, they've been visited by the bylaw and they're not in violation. And they're hesitant to apply for a permit because the current bylaw, it allowed them small sign, which it doesn't serve the purpose. So I'm hoping to buy them a little bit more time. They still have to come to the city for a permit, but at least they can have a larger sign for the time being until, I believe, Richard asked from Building Code here, and he helped us to draft this motion, and staff, I believe they're okay with this motion.
Counselor Moffett, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks. So back in 2016, when we did this review, when we approved the permanent signs on private property bylaw, there was actually a rural component that got deferred. It was referred to a staff person who was then impacted during the 2016 organizational changes at the City of Ottawa. I just want to make sure that staff are going to go back and look at that and that direction that we had. I think I was actually supposed to be part of some of that work. 'Cause one of the things that came out of it at the time was something as simple as guiding people to Osgood. You know, there's roads, there's River Road and Stagecoach in terms of getting people to Osgood, but they had signs on the periphery of Osgood to direct people in. All those signs are illegal. I think one of the things we wanted to look at through this review in the rural area is coming up with some sort of creative solution that can allow the Foodlands of the world to actually advertise on those main bypass roads and get people into town without putting up illegal signage. We've done it before through some of our farm signage and some of our new development signage, and I just wonder if there was, that we'd be looking at that type of thing as a part of this review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, we do acknowledge some of the incongruities between rural and urban, and we'll definitely, through the public consultations that we'll be having, we'll be looking at all these avenues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the motion carried then?
Yep.
Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague and Mr. Vice Chair. Now we go back to item number 5. We held item number 5, the zoning bylaw amendment, 2019 flood relief, and I believe staff is going to have a presentation. Mr. Wise, maybe you can introduce your team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee.
Put
It's
your
our
mic-
pleasure to come before you today.
Just press the mic button. Just press the mic button.
It's on?
Oh,
Yep.
weird.
Yep. I will
No, no.
attempt to enunciate.
You're fine.
So I just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to come before you. We have a good news story, I believe, to come before you today. Ottawa is in a changing climate. We have different weather systems that are coming along. We have different rainfall patterns that are beginning to occur. And the effects of that in the Ottawa area are, of course, unknown. And so part of what we have been looking to do is find new ways to adapt to those changing circumstances, to adapt to a changing world, but also at the same time is provide opportunities to lift some of those regulatory barriers that are getting in people's way as they attempt to adapt as well, too. So I want to thank the good work of my team, Jacob Saltiel, who's sitting here beside me, but also Carol Ruddy, back at the office, and of course, the assistance of our colleagues over in legal, legislative and building code, who've also participated in putting some of these crafting, these regulations together. So I'm going to turn that over to Jacob. Jacob is going to walk you through what it is that we're proposing here today. Go ahead, Jacob.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Jacob Saltiel, and I will be making a presentation today on the Flood Relief Provisions 2019. So I'm going to tell you what they are, why we're here, what the existing provisions are that are going to be changed, what those changes will be, and finally I'll do a quick summary. So, after the flooding this spring in 2019, Council directed a motion at planning staff to come up with flood relief provisions for people affected by the flooding. That's how this report got to here today. So what this report does is it makes a revision to an existing section in the zoning bylaw, which is section 73, which is provisions for the May 2017 flood relief overlay. So what is section 73? Section 73 was passed in 2017 after a similar flood that happened to address the problem that people whose homes had been damaged by flooding would be forced to build in the same spot where their homes had been flooded. So what this amendment did is it allowed people to relocate their homes to a less flood-prone location on the lot and be rebuilt in accordance with Conservation Authority floodproofing standards without the need for a minor variance. So this would make it easier to rebuild your home, but also easier to provide an incentive to comply with Conservation Authority floodproofing standards so that the rebuilt building would be better able to withstand future flooding. As part of this amendment, it also allowed people to have an addition of up to 20% to their rebuilt home. For 2019, we are going to make some changes to Section 73. One of the features of Section 73 is at that time, it was meant to be a temporary provision expiring on September 13th, 2020. What this amendment does is it makes Section 73 permanent. So now that benefit that was applied to people whose homes are being relocated is not time limited. It will now be a permanent feature of the zoning bylaw. In addition, the other amendments to Section 73 are going to clarify which dwellings benefit from these provisions. Previously, it was only homes that were damaged by flooding that could benefit from the provisions. Now, it will also apply to homes where the residents would like to proactively relocate them to a less flood-prone location on their lot and in accordance with floodproofing standards. Finally, we also clarified the scope of the provision to narrow it down to homes that met the size requirements that are contained in Section 73. We'd like to encourage people to rebuild and relocate their homes, but we wanted to narrow the scope so that it did not allow people to build oversized homes within the floodplain overlay. So to summarize, this is a minor revision. It makes Section 73 flood relief provisions permanent. It allows people to either relocate their homes proactively or rebuild them as a result of flooding. And it helps meet the requirements of the floodplain, which is to restrict development. Subject to questions from the chair, thus concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So the chair has stepped aside due to his stated conflict. So do any of the other members have questions for staff? Councillor Moffat.
It's a question on section 73. I'm under the impression that it's to expire in 2020. What's the impact of that on this report?
Section 73 will not expire, sir.
Okay.
Section 73 will now be permanent.
Oh, perfect. So can you elaborate on that? What's the impact of that and the permanence of that? How does that impact what we're doing here?
Previously, what we did is Section 73 was crafted in reaction to the 2017 flood event. So it was a very time-limited thing to respond strictly to how to alleviate properties that were impacted by that 2017 event. When that event happened again in 2019, and we looked and realized that the 1 to 100, 1 to 50, those curves may be changing sometime in the future. Again, difficult to realize. We came to the conclusion that we needed to provide some more flexibility within the zoning bylaw to make sure that we had the ability to adapt going forward. So we made the decision to allow for any property that is within the floodplain to be covered by Section 73 again. If they wish to relocate to a less flood-prone location, they would be able to provide the benefit of this. So it does not expire. It will be a permanent feature of the zoning bylaw, and if you wish to adapt to the changing flood conditions, then you have the opportunity to benefit from this and have a small, a little bit less regulatory barrier in your way.
Great, thank you very much.
No other questions? Okay. Are the recommendations carried? Carried. Thank you for your work on this. And I'll hand the chair back over to Councillor El-Shantiri.
Thank you very much to staff and to Mr. Vice Chair. And back to our agenda, I believe we don't have anyone sign up for open mic session. No, I see none. Notice of motion for consideration at the subsequent meeting? None. Inquiries? None. Other business? None. Adjournment. So our next meeting will be Thursday, December 5th, 2019. It will be budget meeting. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, folks. Are you going to talk to?